Hello, welcome to the Peaceful Wood Turner. Found this this wood in the park near me. Somebody short dumped it. Looked like they cleaned up their yard and got rid of a bunch of stuff that was actually bundled and still just thrown in the park. I really don't like that people do that. They think that they can just throw it there because it's natural stuff to begin with, but they're not really thinking about things like animals and the bugs that are in things and whether or not something's native species and if they're actually going to be transplanting something by accident. But anyway, enough about that kind of thing. The good thing about when they do that is that I get to find some interesting stuff sometimes. So I'm not really sure what this is. From the nature of the cuttings and everything that were there, it looks like it's one of those things that kind of grows as a big bush. It's a little heavier than things like forsythia, but the branches had that same kind of pattern to them. There's a lot of branches. They probably flower and have nice leaves and everything else, but big woody stem. So that's how it looks when it's cut. I cut this end off, and I've got this piece mounted up in here. It is still pretty green, but I figured let me play with it a little bit, try turning it. If I like it, if it seems to turn nicely, if it seems to turn safely, I'm going to go back and get some more and season it. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do is turn this down to round, and then I'm going to try making something that I've seen people post a few times online. They made these nice little crosses where the base is more natural, and then there's a cross there coming right out of the wood. So I'm going to start by just turning some of this down to round a little bit. I'm actually going to move the camera angle and everything else so that I can work more at this end. But I am first going to get this turned down a little so that I can get this mounted up a little bit better, because I'd like to put it in my chuck just to hold it straighter as I'm working on the other end where things are going to be coming off and stuff. So I'm going to start with just the roughing gouge, just to take this down. I've got a couple of little knots, so I've got my tool rest set up so I'm away from them, and they're the areas I really have to think about and be careful of. So I'm going to start turning at around 900 RPM. That's about the highest I can go and not get any shimmy on this. So let me get started. It is fun to turn green wood. It just turns so easily. Makes it seem like this is a simple thing to do. So, makes it look easy, but I'm going to remount this with the chuck. I'm still going to be basically turning between centers, but I'm just going to use the chuck so that as I cut things down and get things a little lower, I'm not going to have as much shimmy. I found that if I get my my live center end a little too tight, I get things kind of trying to warp as I cut and get things down thin. So, I'm going to remount and keep going. Alright, I've got it in the chuck, and I'm just going to change my camera angle a little bit here, because I'm going to be doing most of my work right down at this end, and just going to be taking off up here and leaving a little bit of a base here and see if I can actually get this turned the way I want it to be. Now, I do like working with found and acquired wood. It works well for me. I learn a lot with it, and it's interesting and it's fun. And it's a good way to kind of reduce and reuse and all that kind of thing. But just remember, if you are going to do that kind of thing, if you are going to work with found wood, make sure you wear all your protection. It's important anyway, but it's doubly important if you're working with this kind of stuff, because you really don't know what the things are. You really don't know how they're going to behave. You really just want to keep yourself safe. So I'm keeping around the same speed, about 900 RPM, and I'm going to use my spindle gouge. Alright, almost all the bark's off. Once I get the bark off, what I'm going to do is switch to my parting tool and just mark in where my cross piece is going to be. That way I just do it safely and I know where I'm working. My parting tool wasn't cutting quite right. It's one tool I didn't sharpen this morning, so got it sharpened up and I changed my angle a little bit. It should do a little better. Okay, I made a few mistakes and I ended up with a piece that was just completely unusable. I had a couple catches, I wasn't paying close enough attention, and I really screwed some things up. So, I'm down to a much shorter piece, and I'm going to work this down. This is going to be the base, and then up here is going to be the cross itself. So I'm going to start by just kind of working off some of this bark. After I mark it a little bit with my parting tool so I remember where I'm working. So I'm going to mark down with my parting tool right about here, and then I'm going to just take off all the bark up here, and once I get that off I'll use the parting tool again to just delineate where the cross piece of the cross is going to be. Alright, it's completely cut down, parted off. See right here, there's a little bit of pith. So I know that's probably going to separate out. Let's just say it's going to give it some character. My next step is I need to cut this straight across because it's a cross. So I'm going to mark this first using a straight edge so that I can keep it as even as possible all the way, and then I'll cut it, I think, with a hacksaw. So I've measured using my compass, and I'm going to use that to just kind of try to keep myself working in the same area as I go, because I know what I'll do. I will end up moving my straight edge over to this side, and I will not keep everything even. But by using the compass and lining everything up, I can see that I'm following my same lines, because I can see my little groove here. There we go. That looks pretty straight. I think that should work. So what I'm going to do now is just take my hacksaw and try to cut as carefully as I can. Alright, I have it marked, I have it lined up. Got my gloves on now so that when I make mistakes I'm less likely to hurt myself. And I'm just going to try to get this started as carefully as I can. Pulling back, because it actually goes the opposite way of the way the teeth want to go, but it lets me control my cut a little bit better to begin with. Hard to see, but I'm rocking back and forth a little bit so that I can make sure that my cut is staying lined up. Going through nice and steady and easy. What do you know? I like that. So that worked well, but since I am experimenting, I'm going to switch to a rotary tool and just see how that does. So here's the almost finished cross. I say almost just because I haven't put any kind of actual finish on it. It's still just bare wood. But it was a good learning experience for me. I like how it turned out. And I'm going to make some more out of some more seasoned wood. I'm also interested to see how this wood actually ends up changing color as it oxidizes and dries and everything else. And while I was making this, earlier today, literally while I was working on this, a family member passed away. And the thing that struck me about it was that this particular family member was a ordained minister, and always been a really good example to me of being peaceful. Just an amazing listener, really smart guy, but one of these people who's very quietly smart, and he has the answer if you ask him, but he doesn't just hit you over the head with the answer. But, you know, as I finished this piece, you know, I couldn't help thinking that it kind of fit that I was making this cross at the time that that he was moving on and going home. So, yeah, this is Uncle Paul's cross. Thank you for joining me on the Peaceful Woodturner.